Hello and welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast. And today I'm joined by another special guest. And this is an interesting interview, and I'll tell you why. Because if you listened to the interview that we did with Melanie Diesel, and if you haven't, I highly encourage you to go and check it out. We had a bona fide content expert, one of the best in the world, giving their focus to how the hearing care industry can do a better job of content creation. Um, and today's guest is somebody who's taken that on board and really, I suppose, developed a style of content that sees them get a lot of attention, builds a lot of credibility, and allows them to capture patients earlier on than usual in their hearing care journey. Because I always see this big window of opportunity, right? Let's look at the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of that market right now of people who are yet to get hearing aids, who will at some point in the future, haven't come to terms with they may have a hearing challenge. 20%, if that, are at the stage where they need to do something about it and they're starting to explore their options. This entire industry shoots for the 20%. They're looking for traffic that's looking for hearing aid, hearing loss, hearing test kind of traffic. But there's that bigger window, the people who are yet to come to a decision, yet to come to terms fully with a hearing challenge, but know something isn't right. If you can aim content, help them along the journey, then naturally when they come to needing help, they're only ever going to work with you. And that's something that today's guest, Dr. Jana Emola-Austin, has done incredibly well. So in this episode, we really get to grips with how Jana's built a successful private practice, and then going deep into how she creates great content on a budget. And one thing I really wanted to do on this was, it's always easy to look at the content today, where the lighting's great, the video recording's great, the sound quality's great. But the reason that a lot of people won't do their first video is because they'll record themselves and realize that it wasn't great. Which cripples them with fear, which cripples them with this isn't good enough, which cripples with them that I'm not good enough. And it's a whole nightmare. So I really wanted to get to understand, Jana, is this what was your first video like? And very much go through the process that she's gone through to get to where she is today and the shortcuts that she can feed back to you. So without further ado, let's jump in to this interview.
Welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast, the podcast for high-performing hearing care clinics that want to learn the strategies, ideas, and truths behind some of the smartest private practice clinics in the world. Now, time for your hosts, Phil M. Jones and Ollie Luke.
So I'm here with Dr. Jana Emola-Austin from Allison Audiology. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am awesome, thank you. And I suppose the best starting point is, who are you? Give us an insight into kind of what's got you to where you are today. Give us some life story.
Oh man, that's quite the question. So who am I? If I only knew. I feel like I had an interesting journey into audiology and practice management, things like that, compared to most people in our field. I started in my undergraduate of my college years at Texas A&M, and they did not have an audiology program or really a path to get there. By the time I decided that speech communications and that area was something that I wanted to look into, I actually had to do an additional year of what they called leveling classes to kind of get you up to speed for lacking that in your undergraduate curriculum. And so by the time I got into the master's program, or looking into the master's program, I should say, for speech pathology, which is what I thought I initially wanted to do, that's when I discovered audiology and learned about ears and what all that entails with hearing devices and solutions, and just how different that path was. So that's how I found audiology. I feel like it found me in a sense, or maybe, vice versa. We found each other. And so I switched courses, and that was, additional time in school. So I definitely believe in higher education with 9 years under my belt. So, and I went into it, initially I went into it for the patient care, things of that nature. But the more that you see when you go into to evaluate cases and things like that when you're a student, I also was looking at just the business side. And that was something that I really enjoyed, was practice management, looking at how practices run, how different settings run, things like that on the business and administrative end. And so even when I was going into different settings, it wasn't just looking at what type of patients do you see in these particular areas, whether it's a hospital, a private practice, or school districts, things like that. I was looking more on the business side of things because that was just something that I was drawn to and really interested in. So I feel like where I am today, it's just kind of a culmination of looking at all of that. I was fortunate enough to be able to join Allison Audiology, which I own now, but I joined them, even as a student for a fourth year doing an externship, or for some who aren't familiar with externships, if they're listening, it's very similar to a year-long internship. And so I was able to do that there and stayed on for a good while, about a year and a half or so. And then I actually joined one of the leading hearing aid companies, and I was a trainer for several years. So very similar to the experiences that I took on from before, I was able to go into different offices and help on the audiology side, and then programming hearing aids, fitting hearing aids on difficult patients, things like that. But while I was there, I also get to observe and sometimes take part in the business aspect of things and how the clinic runs. So I was able to see what some clinics did really, really well, and then what others, in my opinion, maybe didn't do as well. And, you never can blend the two when you're in that particular position, because that's not your place to say what's not working. But I was able to take mental note and know that. So when I had the opportunity to come back and join private practice again at Allison Audiology and eventually take over, I feel like I have a lot under my belt that I could see what worked really, really well, not only again on the administrative side, but team building, culture, things of that nature. So that was a very long answer of how I got to where I am today.
And one thing you mentioned there is you always had an interest in the business side. And I feel a lot of us end up owning businesses without ever really wanting to own a business or seeing that as the path we'd end up on. So I suppose from your perspective, I obviously I know you well and see you very different to most in kind of your entrepreneurial tendencies. But looking back at your time of owning Allison Audiology, what have been some of the key things that you think you've done really well?
Yeah, I think, and two, I really feel like I took over at a time when technology in our field changed drastically. I feel like when I was even a student, or just leading up to the point when I took over hearing devices, they were coming out with new technology about every year and a half to, sometimes even 2 or 3 years, just depending on what the big leap was at the time. And so I feel like I took over at a time when technology was changing faster. So we were able to really implement more of kind of like the upgrade programs, things of that nature, to where patients could really see, the differences in technology faster and really to a better scale. I mean, as you know, going from devices that forever were large behind the ear, and that was really one of the only options, or something small in the ear. And now when I took over, we were able to introduce Bluetooth and make them somewhat cool, and patients had interest in what these new features could do. So I feel like I got to take advantage of that and see the upgrade process as it should have been. But I also feel like too, just on the technology side, we started being able to do an electronic newsletter. Our database became more savvy, and not necessarily because the previous owner, didn't do that. It was just that really that technology wasn't there. And so I came into it at a time when some of those programs and things really started, and then got to jump on early in and start implementing, more of that as well. So I feel like it was just, I don't want to say perfect timing, but the way that the chips fell, it was a great time with where technology was and things of that nature. So, I feel like with culture and the way that we treat our patients and the patient experience, for the most part, again, advancements and things have come in that we've implemented, but for the most part, that's still the same, that culture of treating our patients like their family, and that, that won't change. So.
Gotcha. And I suppose to push a little bit harder on the previous question is, you've built a successful private practice. And many people don't make it as far as you've made it. I'd love to understand some of the key things, the key milestones, or key things that you do outside of looking after patients really well that have made an impact on that.
Yeah. I think there's several things. I feel like in the beginning, I tried to wear all the hats because we didn't really have anybody at that time. It was almost a little over 7 years ago. And so even though we had a front office person thing, I think we were at a team of three, if you think of it that way. So as soon as work was over or patient days were over all day, every day, I would just come home and still the goal was, let's grow, let's grow, let's grow. It was never just, I'm so tired, I'll think about it tomorrow. And so, I mean, I can remember nights where it was like I was up until 2, 3, and then back in the office the next morning seeing patients. So I would say it's just keeping your eye on the prize is what I feel like, and knowing what I wanted, and just kind of, you can sleep later and you can do all these other things later, kind of a mentality in the very, very beginning. But then as you do grow and you're able to hire someone and take on different tasks that you were doing. And then I think too, just being smart. I found you guys early on and, a couple years ago to help with some of the marketing and ideas and things like that, trying to outsource as much as I can just for other ideas. So you don't get kind of stuck in one box, because you and I both know when we talk, sometimes I can do that. You just think one way for a while, and it's nice to have somebody else with different eyes look at something. So I feel like using all of those tools and just resources that I've come across and trying to implement those, it's helped to grow, but then also free me up to work on other things. And, we've grown the team, we've opened an additional location and things of that nature. So I don't really feel like it's just one thing that we've done, or even two things, but it's just a number of things. And then two, trying to have your team members help in a way as well. That's, I feel like, another thing. A lot of offices, they have one person and that's what they've done for years. But those roles need to grow too, with additional responsibilities and things of that nature.
Gotcha. And do you still see patients now, or are you do you kind of a few days a week seeing patients, or do you not see any patients?
Yeah, so I see patients on Wednesdays, and then kind of by request, or Wednesdays is still my patient days. I've often said that I would love to get to a point where I don't see patients at all and I just work on the business side, because that's what I love to do. But at the same time, then I don't want to get to the point where if something happens, because, I'm a planner, and plan B is if something happens, I'm the fill-in. So I never want to get to the point where I don't know what's currently happening in audiology. I mean, the technology is changing so fast with how to just connect a hearing device to the computer versus what this particular level of technology is able to do with the smartphone. Others can't. So I just don't want to get into that point where I'm just clueless. So I don't want to be clueless in my own office, other than I'm just good for a hearing test or something like that.
And
So
I think there'll be people listening to this who, have the desire to get to a stage where maybe they are seeing patients not at all, or 1 day per week. What has been the big benefits of having more time to work on the business?
yeah, I feel like I'm able to sometimes turn things around faster, and I laugh just because sometimes I'm not always not the best at that, but just different ideas I feel like that come to you when you could just be doing something so simple and something hits you, whereas if you're with patients all day every day, you don't really, it's not that you don't get to sit and work on your business, it's just that your mind doesn't even have a chance to get to a different place to think of different ideas, or seeing something from one industry and bringing it over to ours, or something that a different business was doing just for patient appreciation that you want to implement into your business. So it could be from small scale to large scale, but I feel like that really has freed me up in the sense of being able to implement and try, different things, and really stay on top of what's changing and what we want to implement. And then just fine tune our clinic and our protocols and what's happening behind the scenes. So.
Nice. And what would your advice be to somebody that wants to make that leap of faith where they stop seeing patients, but similarly feel incredibly scared because it's a big leap?
Yeah. What I see a lot of time just with social media, because we're all, I feel like, audiologists and hearing instrument specialists and business owners, we're all in these same social media groups. And so quite often you'll see that come up, like, how do you know when it's time to step back? And then how do you know when it's time to hire someone, and things like that? And I feel like if you're already thinking that way, it's time, because it means you're mentally tired, or you've gotten to the point where if you're looking at your schedule and you're booked out, it's time to make a change. And I think the biggest thing would just be that I see when we start talking about it in our social media groups is people are saying, yeah, but, you know, I can't trust someone else to do the books, or yeah, but somebody else might not do it like me. And I don't know, I feel like you have to, in a way, let go of that fear in a sense, or maybe just implement some way where they could shadow you, whatever the role is, but implement some way to make sure that they're doing it the way that you want, and then just kind of take that leap of faith. And I think the biggest thing I've learned through all of it is that even when we implement a change, I mean, even my team knows we're going to try it for a little while. And if it doesn't work out, well, then we just chalk it up to one of those that didn't work. And if it works, then it's great. And then let's keep moving on and building whatever the idea was and going from there. So I think just taking that first step is, if you're already thinking in that direction that, you know, I just wish I had one day a week to catch up on emails, well, then take that one day a weekend or afternoon or morning, wherever you are in your clinic experience or clinic journey, and do that, just again for your own mental health and your sanity and and all of that. So it's not always just about being in the clinic, working in the clinic. And I think sometimes we just lose sight of that because that's our everyday, you know?
Gotcha. And one thing that you do very well is you make time to create content. You create videos on YouTube, you create great articles for your website. And I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back from doing this is the fear. Like, I'd love an insight. Your YouTube channel's now has got, you know, tens of thousands of views. You've got a bunch of different videos, but take us back to the first video that you created. What was it like?
It was a disaster. I feel like that very first video, first of all, my camera angle was terrible. I feel like by the end of the video, I was such like a sweaty mess. My hair is like flat, like had been outside in like a storm or something. I mean, it was just awful. I think I was like a statue. It was terrible. And even now, I mean, quite frankly, I feel like they're not perfect, but I feel it too, like that's kind of where our society is now. We don't want to see everything always a beautiful, you know, I'm not a camera person, so I don't even know what words to use in the industry to describe it, but you don't want everything to look like it's a movie and pre-planned and perfect. I mean, I would rather have it look like it's authentic and in our clinic and it's what's happening now, and then it's believable and patients know that it's genuine and authentic. So yeah, that first video, man, it was a hot mess.
And equipment wise, because I think another thing that holds people back is this, I suppose, belief that, oh, I need to spend thousands of dollars on a great camera and lighting and microphones, and I don't know about technology or any of that stuff. You create really high quality videos, but like, what do you use? Like, what technology or what tools do you have in order to create these videos?
So first I did go out, and like most people, because I didn't know, I went on YouTube. Of course, that's where I'm posting my videos. So I went on YouTube to see what do I need to buy. And I found this, 4K, like handy cam type camera, and bought that, the tripod, tried out different kinds of lighting, which here I am trying out this stuff like from Amazon, which I'm not even a camera person. So I couldn't tell you about like bright light, warm light. I have no idea. I'm just going off of what these people are saying. And then I try all these things, and then I realize it's kind of a pain to get your videos off of a handy cam onto a computer. And so I kind of scratched all that, and it wasn't so much about the quality and like high resolution at that point of the video. I just went back to my iPhone. I mean, it's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with. And I feel like when you're doing all these things, because you're already not, or at least for me, not in my comfort zone when I'm on a camera talking to a camera and not a person. And so I feel like just using equipment that you know that you use every day, that's like half the battle. I mean, just trying to get a new camera and trying to figure out those settings, and then how am I going to edit it later? That's too much. I just want to keep it simple. And then, I mean, again, I'm not in the business of, video production and things of that nature. It all just started because patients were asking questions, and they start asking the same questions. And so then you think, we should just make a video on that. And I mean, that's really how it started. We didn't go into this, or I didn't even, thinking, okay, we're going to start doing YouTube videos. Here's this big plan, or here's this, vision that we have. It really just started from grassroots, how do I pair my iPhone and things like that. So I don't know. I think my first video, which I don't even want to say because people are going to go look at it, it was about a cross. We had like you know how the universe works. You have like one person come in for something, and next thing you know, there's like 5 in a row, and they're all asking very similar questions. So it was like, we should just make a video on this. And then, yeah. So, and I think that first video, I'm not even going to lie, I think it took me like 6 hours because I just kept repeating myself thinking, this isn't good. I need to say it better. And then I would start over and say the same thing. Like, it was terrible. But anyway, so yes, my equipment is very simple. Just my iPhone. I do use a tripod so that it's still, but my AirPods for microphones, or you could use a lapel microphone. So yeah, very, very simple equipment.
Amazing. And advice-wise to somebody that's considering making their first videos, what would you say?
To me, because again, you're already outside of your comfort zone and it's going to be nerve-wracking enough, just do something that you feel comfortable talking about. I mean, all of a sudden, even now, I feel like I wouldn't just jump into a topic that I know only the kind of the high points of. It's something where I feel like you should talk about something that you're either passionate about and you know a lot about it already, especially if you're just getting started, but also take the time to prepare because, there's so much. It's not like it was, I feel like, years and years ago where people were just on YouTube or any social media platform just for the fluff. It's been around for long enough now that people want to see, they want to see the fluff in a way, but at the same time, they want to hear it from someone who you've done your research, the deeper level of the content, but you're trying to present it in a way that anyone can listen to it. So, but I feel like when sometimes people just get on and they start talking, that's kind of like I did in my first video. That starts the process, the downward spiral.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 final questions that we ask all our guests. And the first one is, if you had to give advice to Jana, who had just started Allison Audiology or just come in as a 4th year, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give?
Oh man, I thought you might ask this question, so I tried to prepare. I can't lie. But the more I thought about it, I don't know that there is necessarily like 1 or 2 key takeaways that I would share with my younger version of myself, other than maybe just like loosen up a little bit. Don't consistently work so hard. Like, don't lose yourself in this and then lose your personal side of hobbies and things that you enjoy. But other than that, I feel like every high was a high and every low, there's always like a learning lesson in every single thing. So I don't know that there's 1 key or 2 key takeaways that I would say, be sure you don't do that, or, because I know the lesson at the end. And I think it's worth it.
Amazing.
Maybe actually I say that for hiring purposes. When you're hiring someone, I now have a new motto of, if I would not feel comfortable or enjoy grabbing a taco with you, basically just going out to lunch really quick, you're probably not going to make it on our team. And that is something I used to try to hire, because I don't know, you read all these books and you listen to all these podcasts on hiring people. And I think I just made it way too complicated in the beginning. And now if we can just get along and have fun and it doesn't feel like, it's this forced effort and it's a fancy interview or something like that, we can teach you what you need to know. So that would be that would be 1 key thing that I would share with my previous self. If you wouldn't grab a taco, not the right candidate.
Perfect. We have a very similar thing in our team. Like, being a nice person trumps everything. Like, unless it doesn't matter how skilled you are, if you're not a nice person, then you won't make the team. And then final question is, looking out at the world of private practice, knowing what you know now, what's one of the common mistakes or things where most business owners go wrong that you see?
Oh, I feel like that the main thing I talked about before of just thinking that you have to be the one to do it all is really the common mistake. And it doesn't mean that if you're listening that you think there's no way I could do that. Obviously the first year or 2, I couldn't do that either. We didn't have the revenue to just go out and hire people to do all these different tasks in different areas of the business. But just if that's something that you're wanting to do, is to step back a little bit or just to take a break, just make that a goal and just work towards that. Because I feel like so often, like I said, in social media groups, that's one of the things we see the most of, or that I pick up on. And I just feel like people just think just because they can't do it today doesn't mean you can't do it next year or the next year, or just that you couldn't just draw a line in the sand and just pick a day. And that's just, just something that you implement in yourself. It doesn't have to be that you hire someone. It's just a day that you take for yourself. So I think that's
Perfect.
probably the biggest thing. Other than that, I feel like that's everything else, that just because I see it and don't always agree, I'm not in their shoes, so I can't really say don't do that, or something along those lines. It's just kind of where you are in your own world. So
nice. I think that's fair. Perfect. And that brings us to a close. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there we have it. That is a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Hearing podcast. Make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode goes live. If you're feeling kind enough to share your experience and leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. And if you want to learn more, then go to www.orange-grey.com for article, guides and trainings specifically written for high-performing hearing care businesses. We look forward to speaking to you again soon.